Hi there, this is Kathy Parrish, and you are listening to the Update program. Welcome. My guest today is Joseph Travers. He's the founder of Saved in America, and we just appreciate your joining us on the Update program today.
Oh, thank you, Kathy.
Well, we're talking about missing, runaway, and exploited kids and what's being done to save them, and that's what Saved in America is all about, saving kids. We're seeing just so many alarming statistics on the number of kids who go missing every year. If you have kids, it really isn't far-fetched to think that one of them could be yours. Now, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, roughly 800,000 children are reported missing every year in the U.S., and that's about 2,000 per day. That's like crazy.
Yeah, and let me give you another statistic. I guess that any one day, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, there's 300,000 missing children in any one day in the country. Gosh. Now, to enlighten that statistic a little bit, there was a study done by University of San Diego and Point Loma Nazarene, Dr. Amy Carpenter and Dr. Jamie Gates for the Department of Justice just recently, about a year and a half ago. And they say that a minimum of 30% of missing or runaway children will be exploited by a sex trafficker. So if you put those statistics together at any one time, right now, there are 100,000 minor children being enslaved in this country for sex trafficking.
Wow. It just blows your mind. It's so hard to believe because, of course, there's so many myths about human trafficking in general and missing children. We always think that it's somewhere else in a country that's maybe, impoverished.
Correct. And, one thing you were talking about, the few, according to the overall statistics that are taken like the movie Taken.
Right.
That's another sort of falsehood. That is not how the children go missing. In this country, the policing here, the police departments are very, very good at what they do. So when something like that does happen, a physical abduction, the police are all over it. You're going to have alerts, helicopters, and technology like you have no idea. And usually you find the child. The way this is happening, it's from, I call an evil triad. The street gang members and the prison gangs and the cartels have organized. And what happened is when I was working in policing, gangs and narcotics in L.A. County back in the 80s, we saw these three organizations, street gangs, prison gangs, cartels, organize the control of narcotics trafficking in this country. Well, on the turn of the century, this same triad decided, well, now they're going to take over the child sex trafficking industry, and now they have. So in reality, what you have is if you show me a narcotics trafficker, that is a sex trafficker, and that is a gang member. It's all one and the same now.
Really?
And it's all controlled. And the way they seduce these girls, they don't just take them like we talked about in the movie Taken. They seduce them through social networking. There's another study in San Diego County which says that every public middle school and high school has a gang recruiter in it looking for girls to seduce through social networking to bring into child sex trafficking.
So what would this person be? Another student or? Another
student. And what happens in a gang lifestyle, they recruit future gang members for their organization, right? For their illegalities. So what they do is they take these younger kids that grew up in the same neighborhoods where the gangs are infested, and they need to be jumped in the gang. And one of the ways to get jumped in is to become a recruiter and seduce young girls so the gangs can sell them.
Boy, and you mentioned about the social networking being just a way in to track down these kids. It's just another reason why we really need to pay attention to what's going on with our kids in social networking.
Absolutely.
Where are they? What sites are they going to?
You have the basic ones, Facebook, and you have
right.
Snapchat, Instagram, etc. But then you have other ones that, and they come out all the time, new ones. I mean, there's just tons of them where they download. And the kids, it's really hard to keep up with it because technology is really hard to keep up with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you and I, we didn't grow up with a cell phone in our hand.
That's right.
Right, but the children now, I mean, I still have to call my son, hey, Joshua, tell me how this works on this Apple phone.
Oh, yeah, I do it all the time, too,
Right.
with my son. Yeah.
So that's the fight we're fighting is the increase in technology. And when you have children now, you have to stay up with that technology. You have to have safeguards. You have to know what's going on. But more importantly, you have to know your child and be able to determine what's going on in your child's life. Because these gang members, they prey on the child that is sitting on the end of the lunch bench, sad about something. And that's when they move in. And they become their friend, tell them how beautiful they are. They actually seduce them, almost like, the serpent seduced Eve in the garden 6,000 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. That's really scary when you think about it. It's really scary. You mentioned that you were formerly a police officer. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your inspiration for this? Did you see a lot of that when you were working as a police officer? Did you encounter these kinds of situations that just kind of encouraged you to get involved in an organization like Saved in America?
Not really.
Okay.
This really wasn't like it is now. The gangs weren't really well organized then. And like I said, that all happened in the late 80s, early 90s. And my inspiration, though, for this is when I was born again in 1995. And I went to Bible College, Calvary Chapel Bible College. I actually had an office here in this building on the second floor for a few years.
That is really something.
But what happened, I was doing some ministries, different types of ministries. And I read an article in 2009 about a young girl named Brittany Drexel from upstate New York. And it's a really sad story, but Brittany was from upstate New York, 17-year-old, and she was a senior in high school. Well, some of her friends were 18 and seniors in high school, and they decided to go to spring break down in South Carolina in Myrtle Beach. And Brittany wanted to go, and Mom said, no, you're 17, you're not going to Myrtle Beach. So she ran away to go with her friends down to Myrtle Beach. There's a photo of her coming out of the hotel where everyone was staying, and that's the last anyone saw Brittany. And I thought to myself, wow, I hope Brittany wasn't caught up, seduced in this new child sex trafficking. Well, the next week I read an article from the Orange County Register about United States Navy SEALs going overseas and rescuing children from foreign countries. And I thought to myself, I need to talk to these guys. So I got a hold of the reporter who got a hold of the SEALs. We had a meeting and decided to form an organization we had 3 pillars in mind. One was we never charge parents for our services. Number 2, we remain volunteers, never take money. And 3, we take former special operators like Navy SEALs and former gang and narcotics police officers, license them as private investigators, insure them, and go out and find these children, these runaway, these missing children that are seduced by these sex traffickers, and it's a race against the clock. We want to get the kids before the traffickers get the kids.
Right, and I want to talk to you about that too, because you can't help but think about the fact that time is an issue.
We call it the Golden 48. This is a study out of Madera County, California, which says that within the first 48 hours, that 60% of all runaway kids are approached by a child sex trafficker.
60%, that high?
60%.
Wow. It's so scary as a parent today. Now, as far as the age range, when we refer to kids a lot and children, what is the definition of a child in this particular case?
17 and under. And we've had a case where a young girl was trafficked starting at the age of 11. Actually, our first recovery in December 2014 was a 14-year-old that was trafficked since 11 years old.
Absolutely breaks your heart. What other organizations do you work with in doing this? I would imagine, of course, the police force you're working with.
Correct. We work with various police departments. We've done 2 joint operations with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department with Sheriff Joe Lombardo. Incredible man. He is just an innovator in policing. He sees the problem. He sees that a runaway just isn't a runaway. A runaway now, because of the statistics we talked about, that's a high priority call now, which it wasn't 30 years ago.
Right.
30 years ago, if your child went missing, you called around the neighborhood.
That's
and your
right.
child was staying at somebody's house.
Yeah.
Right? It isn't that way anymore.
It's a new day.
It's a new day, exactly. And then we're a member of the Human Smuggling Trafficking Center in Washington, D.C. It's 9 organizations. We're sort of like the little guy on the block. I mean, this is with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the Polaris Group, the McCain Institute, and we meet in D.C. about once every 2 months and talk about the big issue of human trafficking, and we bring to the table the specifics of child sex trafficking.
So you're working with cases that are all over the country.
Correct. We have, at last count, we've assisted law enforcement and parents in the recovery of 233 children. A little over 100 of those were from high-risk facilities that we've prevented traffickers from exploiting the child again.
Right. And you mentioned before, too, that you don't take any money from the parents and the families who are, coming to you in need of help.
That's true. That's one of our pillars. We will not accept money from anyone for
That's
parents.
amazing.
Right. And we do that because we want the parents to know, and if you don't mind, I can give you a true scenario.
I would love to hear that, yes.
And this is a real case. A 14-year-old girl in Sparks, Nevada, her mother came in the room to take her to school. Windows open, and she's gone. She calls the local police department. They show up. They take a runaway report, and they ask Mom, do you know why she left? Any reason? Is something going on in her life? And Mom says, I have no idea. I really don't. Because the answer, of course, is in the social networking. So the patrol officer takes a report, reports it to the National Crime Information Center, the FBI Bureau. And that way, if a patrolman happens to run across her, right, she's missing, and they could pick her up and take her back. Well, then it takes 3 to 5 days for this patrolman then to write a report, and then it goes to the detective of missing persons, and it might sit in the detective's hold basket for 2, 3, 4 days. So, and then if the department is even larger, that's more time. And where I'm going with this, it's 7 to 10 days till a detective even gets the case, and we already talked about the Golden 48. Mm-hmm. So there's a gap that Saved in America tries to fill. So what happened was Mom ended up calling us after about 3 days. We took the case. We gave it to we call our tech ops division. They're the ones who go in with the social networking and figure out through social networking, through a matrix on basically who is the bad guy here. And we found out it was a 28-year-old gang member affiliated with some of the cartels and prison gangs and street gangs down in San Diego and in Mexico. And they had taken her to Baja California, Rosarito Beach, and they were selling her there in Rosarito Beach. So we got together. We have a couple former intelligence officers from San Diego PD that work with us on our cases in Mexico, and we ended up working with the Mexican police and recovered her, and the bad guy went to jail. But this is a scenario how, again, mother never even knew what was going on because all of it was done secretively in social networking.
Mm-hmm. And mother probably very busy, like most parents are today, and it's tough. It's way tougher than the time that I was raising kids, way tougher.
Well, it is. And my son now, he's 30. He's actually our case manager, Joshua. And Joshua grew up in the church, Calvary Chapel, So
nice, yes.
And now he's a police officer, Charlottesville, Virginia Police Department. And and does the case management for us still, as he does that. But even
the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
No, it's a wonderful place, Charlottesville. If you've never been to Charlottesville, Virginia, it's a wonderful wonderful place. He actually graduated from Liberty University. So,
nice.
Yeah, was an all-American heavyweight wrestler and just loved it, loves the Lord, and loves his job now as a police officer.
Oh, praise God for that. That's awesome. Well, this is an education, and as parents, we really need to be aware of what's happening with our kids and how it relates to social media.
Yes, and that, again, is going to take a wake-up call for parents. You really, really have to take whatever time you can and learn this, because it's really not realistic nowadays for a child, especially in their teens, not to have a cell phone.
That's right.
I mean, you just walk around anywhere, and you see the kids. They're not looking where they're going. They're on their phone, texting while they're walking.
That's right.
So,
well, if you're just joining us, you're listening to the Update program. I'm Kathy Parrish in studio with my guest, Joseph Travers, who's the founder of Saved in America. And we're talking about missing children and what the organization is doing to save them. Joseph, I want to give out the hotline for anybody who might be listening. That number is 760-348-8808. That's 760-348-8808. Has there ever been a case that you've worked where the child didn't want to return home?
Most of those are like that, unfortunately, because what happens is the case I talked about previously from Nevada to Mexico, they use drugs, of course, because they're also narcotics dealers. There was a 14-year-old girl that was seduced to leave her home in Utah and was being trafficked down in San Diego in a cartel house. And when you know the problem we have with opiates in this country, and heroin is just such a strong addiction, physical addiction. All the kids want, and the traffickers know that, all the child wants now is more heroin. And they'll do anything just to get the heroin. And we were fortunate enough to help San Diego PD recover that child. And she's already now through rehab, and we're going to start a scholarship fund for her. She wants to go to cosmetology school.
Oh, boy.
And
that's wonderful.
She's just, her and her mom are living the type of life that she missed during this time frame when they seduced her and took her to San Diego and did this to her.
Right. We didn't talk about this, but this is really important. What are the red flags that people should be noticing as we go about our day-to-day lives that might clue us in as to something's not right there? Maybe I need to call Saved in America or some other, maybe I need to call authorities about this. What are some of those red flags?
Well, those urgent red flags, as you're speaking of, could be you see a young girl, it doesn't look right with older men. The man is acting like some kind of bodyguard instead of a relative or father. And that's a big red flag. And there's been some sightings like that. Even there was a flight attendant who noticed that on an airplane and called the authorities, and it actually was a trafficker with a young girl moving her, because these gangs trade and sell these girls across the country. But in the beginning, I think some of the red flags are, is your child changing friends for no apparent reason? Are they becoming a little distant? Are grades changing? The interest in sports and athletics or subjects, is that fading away? And that not necessarily in and of itself is that the child is being seduced by a trafficker, because that could happen. Middle school lives are just complicated enough as it is. But that is an indicator something is going on in your child's life. And that would be when, hey, I need to find out what's going on here.
It's just, again, a reminder that we really need to stay in tune with what's going on with our kids more than ever.
Well, yeah. Our children, as we know it, they're a gift from God. Mm-hmm. And
absolutely.
And we're responsible to take care and raise up a child in the way they should go.
We are.
And so they'll never depart therefrom.
We talk about how we need to be very engaged in our children's lives. How can we get involved with the efforts of Saved in America from an outsider standpoint? How can we help, whether it's volunteering or donating?
go to the website, first of all, savedinamerica.org. And something interesting about that name. See, the name was coined for two purposes. Saved in America, meaning that we're only going after American children, to save American children. But it's also saved spiritually in America. And we give out, every time we assist with the recovery of a child, we have Saved in America Bibles. And I personally go to the child and I make sure the child has an opportunity to accept Jesus, because that is the only real rehabilitation, is the Lord.
That's right.
Yeah, everything else is just patchwork.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you about that.
Yes.
What kind of rehabilitation is there?
Yeah,
with
we try to get them out of California because you can't lock the children down. And so we take them to different states that have lockdown long-term rehab centers. But we try to use, I try to find Christian-based ones, and there's really not that many. Basically, there's not that many rehabilitation centers for children anyway. So that's a difficult hurdle, and we work with the parents based on how to raise money for them, how much their insurance is going to pay if they have any, and so there's all those types of issues. Just so the audience knows, once you recover a child, that's only half the battle. Then it's let's get the child back as childhood, the rehabilitation. That's actually the bigger battle.
Wow. And we don't really think about that, do we? It's just, you're focused on saving the child, rescuing them from their immediate danger. But what happens afterward?
That's it. What
is
happens,
most important.
What happens next? And we're actually raising money to purchase a rehabilitation center. So when we recover a child, or a police agency or task force does, there's a transitional housing. So the child can come in a safe arena to transition into a long-term facility.
Mm-hmm. So we can, you were going to say that we can support how?
We have a reserve program, by the way. So if you're a current or former law enforcement officer, a licensed private investigator, or a former special operator, or know any, go to our website and fill it out and become part of the Saved in America reserves. And we have over 100 across the country now, because we're based in California, but we go all across the United States, as far as we've recovered a child in Jacksonville, Florida. So that way, too, there's opportunities for other volunteer opportunities, just getting the word out, the assessment. Look at the website, especially the media part, and so you're educated, and bring people to the website so they become educated. We covered a child in San Diego, and we helped the mother and the daughter financially leave the state and go somewhere, because obviously the traffickers are looking for the girl because they want to keep trafficking her.
Right.
So, of course, all that takes money, expenses, equipment, et cetera. So that's what we use the money for. There's a lot of opportunities for Saved in America on the website.
And again, they would go to your website at savedinamerica.org.
Correct.
Well, this has been so enlightening about, of course, a subject that is certainly not a positive one, something that needs to be addressed, and not just by parents. We're all in this, because, as you mentioned before, we all have that responsibility to protect our kids, and that includes everybody's kids. So we will definitely be going to your website at savedinamerica.org, and the hotline, again, is 760-348-8808 for anybody who's in need right now. And this has been just invaluable information, and I certainly appreciate your coming in.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate being here on KWVE. Like I said, this is like coming home.
It's like coming home, because you knew Pastor Chuck.
Oh, Pastor Chuck, we used to have some good times.
We've been speaking with Joseph Travers of Saved in America. Thanks again so much for making us more aware of the serious problem of the trafficking of children and missing children, and what's being done to save them, too. You and your organization, Saved in America, are giving hope to desperate parents and families all over the country. So thank you for the incredible work you're doing. God bless you for it as well, and we wish you continued support.
Thank you, Kathy.
Once again, if you'd like to find out more information about Saved in America, please visit their website at savedinamerica.org. And again, the hotline 760-348-8808. Thanks for joining us on the Update program. I'm Kathy Parrish.
You've been listening to the Update program. The views and opinions expressed on Updates do not necessarily reflect those of the ownership, management, staff, or sponsors of this station. We welcome your thoughts. Send them to Update Program 3000 West MacArthur Boulevard, Suite 500, Santa Ana, California, 92704. Thanks for listening, and God bless.